Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast where people leaders share their side of the story. We talk about the challenges they're facing, how they're addressing them, and what changes they hope to see as the workplace evolves. This podcast is sponsored by AllVoices, the all-in-one employee relations platform. So hello, and welcome to HR Voices. I'm your host, Rebecca Taylor, and I'm here with Paul Brubaker, Vice President of HR for North America at Karl Storz. Welcome, Paul. It's so nice to have you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Nice to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And I know some of you who are listening to this for the first time might be new here. So just to let you know, HR Voices explores real and fabricated anonymized employee relations scenarios through the lens of experienced HR and people leaders just like Paul. So we're going to evaluate a realistic workplace situation and demonstrate how we assess risk, apply judgment, and design practical responses. So our goal is to reveal how strong HR leaders think when facing ambiguity. We're not here to find a single correct answer because so often in HR that just does not exist. So thank you, Paul, for being here to chat through this scenario with me and go through some of the bells and whistles that we might see.
Sure. Glad to. It's, as you say, no correct answer exists. It's an art. So,
Yep.
Well, I'll have my opinion and some of your listeners may have different opinions. That's okay.
That's the beauty of it. We can't all agree on everything, right? Or, and it's so different when you're talking about scenarios when any one scenario can have 80 different outcomes, right? So it's like you're just trying to get to the best outcome that you can with the information you have at the time.
So true. And if you've got good partners within your company, it's great because it's the whole diversity issue here. I have one framework and hopefully my colleague has a different framework, and we should hear that and come up with a better answer together than we do alone. So, but I'm alone today, so I'll give you my answer.
Well, we're together, so at least we have each other.
There you go. You can disagree with me if you like.
Yeah, we'll probably debate a little bit, but I also sometimes debate just to kind of to show some of what the debate is too. So this will be fun.
Good.
So here's our scenario for today. So we're calling this one the internal investigation leak. HR is conducting a confidential investigation into allegations of financial misconduct by a division VP. The subject of the investigation appears to have been tipped off, changing behavior, purging emails, and coaching direct reports on what to say. HR believes that the leak came from within HR or legal. HR must conduct an investigation within its own team while simultaneously managing the original investigation. It cannot pause the financial misconduct inquiry. The VP's attorney sends a preservation letter the same day the internal leak is suspected. HR must now sequence its response to multiple simultaneous crises without contaminating either inquiry. So this one's a doozy, right? Because, you're talking about sort of the calls coming from inside the house. So when you first hear this scenario, before we even dive into what to do, what stands out to you as the most risky or unclear from what we know so far?
Well, I think it's odd and interesting that the attorney, why there's already an attorney for the VP who's ever investigating. So how did that already happen? And they're putting out a link that says, don't destroy anything, which the report says that maybe the VP is coaching people to destroy things. So it's at odds a little bit there. And of course, given just those facts, a person might jump to the conclusion the VP is absolutely guilty and protecting themselves and all of this. And I think as an HR person, we have to step back, stop for a minute, and realize, okay, this is the facts we have. We know we need an investigation. We need to investigate that person. Sounds like we need to investigate either our own team or our legal team. And we need to not jump to any conclusions. So we need to have a good plan as we approach it. Clearly, we need to already make sure we're following the advice of that attorney, but internal attorneys would say the same. Just don't be deleting relevant emails or anything else. So we should make sure we put out a notice that legal's help probably to have a legal hold on all of those kinds of.
Yeah.
So that would be a start. And then I would suggest, let me just say, I've been very fortunate in my career not to work with either companies or leadership teams who did not have high integrity. So thankfully, I haven't had to deal with this specific issue.
That's good.
There's always been employee, maybe at a lower level, who might have not had some integrity, deal with those. And then also when I built my team in HR, let them know this is a special post to our company. And if I cannot trust you, you cannot be on the team.
Yeah.
And so I've also been fortunate to, I believe, not have people lead things that they shouldn't be leading. But so then if I get legal on board with the legal hold, then I would start to approach different investigations. And I would have to assume that anyone that's involved already, I would probably know who on the team, HR wise or legal, is starting to conduct the investigation. So I think I would want to see if I have any other expertise in-house to conduct the investigation separately so that we can remove anyone who might have tainted the situation.
Yeah.
It might include going outside to an attorney. I hate to do that. It costs money. It takes time, but that's certainly a fallback, certainly a possibility of something to do. If we've had some financial malfeasance, really need to look at that quickly. And if it is a leader on the leadership team in that company, we need to address it quickly.
Yeah.
And there is no, if we are certain that this happened and it was this person, that person's gone. There's no compromise, they're just gone. Trust is critical.
Yeah.
So we just think we'd have to figure out who needs to be approached, who needs to be asked questions of, what are the questions, and who's going to ask them. And really the who is the biggest question on the front end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially when you're not sure who is the leaker and how do you kind of, could it be someone who was already on the case, because they're doing this sort of confidential investigation? Or, is it someone who somehow had access to that information? Because sometimes when you're in HR, you can see everything. And sometimes there are tiers of permissions for whatever level of, information you're able to access, even within HR, depending on the size of your organization. I mean, I know you're working with a large organization. I would assume not every HR person knows everything, right? I assume the higher up you get, the more access to information you have, because that's some of the benefit of growing and having the bigger title. So what are some things that what are some assumptions that you're fighting early on when you first hear this? I have some, so I'm curious what you might be fighting.
The first assumption is that this executive is guilty as heck, because you see these things happening, you just assume they must be guilty, and that they must have been the ones that ordered these things to be deleted, and people will say so. So that's the biggest one that hits me. And that's a crazy one. And that's the one that you have to guard against. You can't assume guilt before you do it.
Yeah.
And then
it's so hard.
It is, right?
Yeah.
There's two sides to every story. And then, and oftentimes in ER, we hear this story and we think they're guilty, somebody's guilty. And then we hear this story and we go, oh, well, that makes sense. So maybe they're not guilty. And in the end, you can't prove it, perhaps.
Yeah.
Then you've got to decide, okay, what's the right remedy?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just a write-up and sure you don't do these kinds of things and they stay? Is it a coaching? What is it? But the ER person or investigation team does have to come to a conclusion. They've got to decide one way or another what's going to happen to someone.
Yeah. I know it's so hard. It's very hard for me to see that this person is deleting emails and that they already have a lawyer and to still assume they're innocent, which I know an investigation isn't a trial, right? So the innocent until proven guilty isn't a thing in HR the same way, but I personally try to go into everything with that lens as much as possible, because it can be tempting to sort of want to assume guilt because it can be tempting to make it feel more straightforward that way. You kind of have to poke and say, what I'm looking at might not be the full story. There could be pieces that are missing. Let's assume everyone's innocent and really find the evidence to back up these allegations. But if you're deleting emails because you hear that someone's investigating you, I don't know, that's a pretty hard thing for me to get around. And then I also, an assumption that comes just from years of seeing stuff like this is I would look at if this VP has an outside personal relationship with someone in legal or HR. Because I'm like, maybe they have a friend on the inside, whether it's a romantic relationship, just a friendship, whatever that is, right? And not assume that that automatically means that's the leaker. But just as, again, my curious hat is on, and I'm like, who do they talk to outside of work? And what may have someone have accidentally told them? Because it can be an accident. It doesn't, it could be like, oh, we were out last night and something slipped, and now all of a sudden he's got a lawyer and he's deleting emails.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly possible. And depending on the size of company, you may know immediately who they're might be seeing or talking with.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. Like I said early on, they already have a lawyer. I'm an executive. I don't have a lawyer that I just on the phone and say, hey, I got this thing going on.
Yeah.
So he or she, that executive, may have been tipped off and to go get attorney involved. And then it's funny, the attorney's telling the company not to delete anything when that potentially that executive is saying, oh, delete everything. On the other end, maybe it's somebody right below them who likes them or wants to protect them. And that person has heard that they got interviewed and was told they was a confidential investigation, but they weren't so confidential. So they called all their friends and said, hey, remember that email that came out from this person?
Yeah.
Don't delete that one or those 5 because that's really not a good look. So I mean, there's different scenarios that could go on with this stuff. So it's really important to just approach it methodically. Here are the questions we want to ask witnesses or people that are potentially involved. Here's questions we want to ask the complainant and the questions we want to ask this executive. The problem that you've got in my company, which isn't huge, we have one employee relations person that really does these types of investigations.
Yeah.
We have HR business partners who have done them, but the one person takes the big investigation.
Yeah.
So if I'm worried about that one person having divulged something, then who am I going to have do it?
Yeah.
Keep it in-house. And what I might do is pair up 2 HR VPs to do the investigation so they can share their own knowledge. Thankfully, we have some tools that would provide us with a template set of questions, some of which don't apply, but some will, and then you can create your own sub-questions. But so then you can show that you've asked all these people this sets of questions, and you've got your notes, and you can start to piece things together.
Yeah.
But we've ignored the whole other issue, which is who on the HR team or legal team might have spilled the beans.
Yeah.
It's a great question. And, again, this is another one where if you find out that really the investigator, the HR team, or the lawyer actually hold this executive through our investigation, they should watch out, maybe delete some. Who knows what got said?
Yeah.
That person is also gone if you can prove that.
Yeah.
There's no gray on this one for me.
Yeah.
Because it's all about trust. If I can't trust you, you're done. And it should be true at the leadership level, and it's true at the investigation level. And really, it's true for any employee. Fine, that's just lying. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. It's one of those things that's a non-starter for me too. It's just like if you're lying and if you're trusted with valuable information because you're at that level, right? You're a VP level. This isn't your first rodeo. Like you should know better. There are leadership standards and general expectations of a leader. And a lot of that has to do with integrity, trust, and also just good behavior, right? With things like this. And then from the HR side, I mean, HR can sometimes get a bad rep because people don't trust HR. So I feel like the bar for integrity and trust is so much higher just because we're already fighting public opinion sometimes. So this is the thing that I would always struggle with is I would look at it as this person who leaked is making the rest of us look bad. Because now if the organization somehow finds out that there's an HR person who leaked someone's business, then that calls into question the trust of the whole team for the company.
100%.
And
Well
that's
said,
hard.
Rebecca. Yeah, that's really hard. And trying to build trust with HR so that you're the first to hear rather than the last to hear of an issue,
Yeah.
it's critical to your success. As you were talking to, I started to think about maybe this executive is the anointed one from the president, the next level up, right?
Yeah.
CEO, and they really like this person. Now you're going to potentially end up terminating that person, right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the courage that it takes, be the representative of the company to just, this is what has to happen. And you got to now convince the CEO that this person's already terminated. And here's why. And you've got to have the facts and be ready
Yeah.
to sound that, right? So courage comes into place as well, as you may feel your job is threatened or could be threatened if the CEO doesn't like you or whatever. And it comes in all the time. Oh,
Yeah.
want to return to office more often, more days a week. And me, let's say, as the voice of the employee is, why? Production is still good. We're doing all of this stuff very well. Justify to me why we have to bring people in more often, especially at high gas prices.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
It costs a lot more to go to work now.
and so you go through these things, and it does take courage to speak up, but you have to. That's your job.
Yeah.
Your
It is.
job is not to represent necessarily the employees, but it's the company. We have employees who are disengaged, who don't trust the company or don't, then we lose the extra effort that they want to give the company. If they're not engaged and they're just there for a paycheck, that's not a great situation. So there's so many things we have to think about in HR, and some of it's courage, speaking truth to power, all that kind of stuff. But we certainly have to at least do things like investigations or any of the other processes that we do in HR as professionals. We should have a process and we should follow the process.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter if it's the top person, the bottom person.
Yeah.
Got to be.
It's true. Especially if, I want to stop and just acknowledge the bravery aspect that you mentioned, because it's so true. And I don't think it's said or acknowledged enough, just that it does take bravery to stand up to your CEO or to push back on a decision that you disagree with. And sometimes we'll push back and we get overruled. It is what it is. You would say that that's the same for any job, any position, right? But
100%.
having that confidence and speaking truth to power, I think, comes a lot from also having a lot of data to back up where you're coming from, whether that's employee sentiment data or performance data, investigation data, right? Like, it's always been the way that I am. But that's just something that it's like, we have to get comfortable with data, because that's what can give us the foundation to be brave, because we can say, no, I'm going to stand up to you, and here's all the evidence and proof that I have that I'm right. There's a lot to that.
There is a whole lot. There is nothing better than having data. And we were just looking at our diversity data. We look at dashboard data, our service level agreements. How are we doing as an entity within the business? Would I want to hire HR internally? Because if I don't think they're delivering, maybe I want to go outside and hire a whole HR team outside, let them deliver it for me. So we need to prove our worth, and we need to make sure that we're bringing the best to the company. And what does that mean, right? It starts with the recruiting. We got to find the best talent. We've got to bring them in well so that they understand the company. We've got to develop them as the time goes by to keep them so that they're excited about working with us. And these are all critical things. I'm not saying anything that 99.5% of your listeners don't know, but it's so critical what we do, because the business doesn't exist without the talent. And there's a balance, because people always want more people to help. Oh, we got so much to do, and at some point there's too many people, and now you're not making enough money to make it make sense to have the business. And
Yeah.
so you've got this dichotomy that goes on all the time. It's a fine line to walk. But I will say talent wins in the end. And so if you can find the right talent, put together a spectacular team, company's going to win. And I gave a speech one time about, and I use big words like win and have fun. So that was my speech. And it
Big
was
was.
like,
I
okay,
love it.
so, when the company wins, we grow. Win another customer, we grow. That's all good. And then winning is fun. At least for me, I think it's way
Same.
more fun to win than it is to lose. I've been in some companies that have had downsizing, kind of never win that way. And then as the company wins and grows, then the employees can grow and you can get more responsibilities because you've got a bigger company. And now you've got a bigger company, maybe you need another one of these, another one of those positions, and the employees can move. And then that's exciting to me. That's a win to watch people get to grow themselves and their careers so that they win and they're happy to be here. Well, that's fun for them. And so
Yeah.
they win and they have fun. So they win and have fun. The company wins and have fun. And
It's
then
a
the
little
customer's
cycle.
getting great stuff. And it's virtuous cycle for sure.
Yeah.
So,
I love that because that's also, winning, having fun. It also kind of gives you, this sense, it could give you a sense of purpose in the work that you have, which, if you look at any engagement survey these days, people are really struggling to find purpose in the work that they have. And I think a lot of it is because of just the market that we're in, the dynamic that we're in, that there's just so much turnover happening in organizations. So, people are kind of just burnt out and trying to figure it out. But when you're kind of looking at it as the whole conversation around tenure and about talent, the more people feel like they're winning, the more of their own ingenuity, their own sort of engagement they're going to give to their role in their job. And that's when you also get people doing their thing. And, if people kind of are able to do that, if you get the innovation, you get the connection, they're going to give customers great experiences, they're going to build great products. You're going to have a tenured workforce that has more of that trust. Because we talked about trust as sort of the core of this whole issue here is that no matter what happens, trust is broken. And that's the biggest thing you're going to deal with because that's what still exists after this case closes. But if you have people who have been working together for a while, who've been through stuff together and have, come at it the other side, you're going to look at situations a lot differently and you just have a more connected workforce that way.
I'm fortunate to work in a med device company and we improve patient lives. So
Big.
that purpose resonates with our employee population throughout. So we are very fortunate to have an easier purpose for people to understand. And so we retain people. We were going through some changes, quite a bit of change in the recent years. And one of the engineers of all people said, I've got all these people that are upset, all this change. And he said, I asked him two questions. Do you believe in our purpose? Well, people say yes. He says, do you like the people you work with? And they go, yes. We have great people, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. We do.
Yeah. You
And
should
so,
brag.
and then he says, so what's wrong with that? I just wait it out. It'll be okay. We'll get through the change and it'll all be okay. We don't know all the answers today, but it'll be okay. And it alleviate a lot of concern on people's parts just with those two questions. So
I love
the
that.
simplicity was beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Purpose, people, and we're there.
Yeah.
And so, it's not always easy. It doesn't mean it's always easy, but we have a spectacular workforce. It's amazing to work here. You can get through a lot of things when you have a clear purpose and if you've got great folks to work with.
Yeah. That's a really, that should be that should be the tagline for this episode because I could not agree more. It's so true. It's so true. And believe it or not, we're actually just about at time. So I have one more question for you before we wrap.
Please.
So I know we kind of talked about, advice for, throughout this sort of episode, advice for HR people kind of in this scenario. But, if you could summarize, what's one big piece of advice that you have for an HR person who might be facing a similar scenario themselves?
A similar scenario like we talked about.
Like a dual investigation like this.
I think, the advice is to stand back and take a deep breath and don't assume anything. Don't assume one person is guilty, another's not, or that what happened or anything else. go through the process with an open mind and then make sure the process is methodical.
That's solid. That's what I would call you to ask for, because sometimes that's what I always struggled with investigations. I always have to call someone to say, I'm coming in with a lot of opinions and I need to kind of like cool them for a minute so that I can actually do this investigation the right way. So that's advice that I think is just so wise and universal and absolutely needed, especially when you're looking at HR on HR crime, I guess we'll call it.
Yeah, totally. It's fun. It's fun.
Thank you so much, Paul, for being here. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Rebecca.